Welcome, my friends! In this video, I'll be covering section 6.6, Multivariable Thinking, Additional Variables in a Scatterplot. There are many ways to represent a third variable on a scatterplot, but some of the most common include using distinct colors to represent a categorical variable, using a color scale to represent a quantitative variable, and then adjusting the size of the dots on the scatterplot based on a quantitative variable. We'll look at examples of all three of these. Suppose this is your scatterplot. It appears that we have a very weak positive correlation between our two variables, maybe a little bit of an upward trend as we move from left to right. And it turns out that the correlation coefficient in this case is about 0.3516, so a pretty weak positive correlation. But it could be the case that if we separate this into different groups, we could start to see some sort of relationship. So let me show you the exact same graph, but now colored based on some categorical variable, which we're just calling group A and B. This could be like males and females. This could be, people with a job versus people without a job, something like that, right? And now we see distinct patterns here. So we have the two different groups. The group A is really clumped towards the top here, and then the group B is towards the bottom. So when we split up the scatterplot by a categorical variable, we might discover a stronger correlation by the groups. And in fact, if we went ahead and calculated the correlation for each of those groups individually, we would see that group A has a correlation coefficient of 0.6671. So that's a fairly moderate positive correlation. And then group B has just a little bit stronger of a correlation than we had with combined. I think maybe because of some of the somewhat outliers that are a little bit above the line here. So kind of the idea here is it could be the case that even if you see your scatterplot and it seems like maybe there's not really much of a correlation, perhaps if you split this up by some categorical variable, you might be able to see some sort of relationship that's a little bit stronger than if you hadn't done it that way. Okay, so that's splitting up the scatterplot based on a categorical variable, but now you can also do it, the colors based on a quantitative variable. So you'll sometimes see like a color scale to represent a third variable. So this is actually data from data that I have collected from students in my class. And this is the Grand Valley GPA on the horizontal axis, and then the same student's high school GPA on the vertical axis. And just out of interest, I decided to put the student debt as the color of the dots here. So the students who had lower student debt, closer to 0, those are more the blue colors, and then the redder the color is, the higher the student debt. So it says here the higher anticipated student debt amounts are shown in red, but perhaps color is not the best way to show this. There could be one other way we could show this that could give us more of an idea of how there could be some sort of relationship. And that would be with the size. I kind of like this one. So now we see the higher student debt is represented by the higher size. And this is all just anticipated. So the students just kind of estimated how much debt they would seem that they thought they'd have when they graduate. And we can now see here that the students that tend towards the higher GPA, both Grand Valley and high school, the ones who are, up here, the highest for both, also tend to be the students that anticipate having the most student debt, which was maybe not quite as apparent when we just looked at this picture right here. So now with the dot size representing student debt, we can more easily see that students with a higher GPA tend to anticipate a higher debt. So this section is just to get you thinking about other ways you can display some things in a scatterplot. A couple different ways you could display a third variable on your scatterplot. So hopefully you found that interesting. All right, that's all I had to talk about in this video, so I will see you in the next one.